and you gonna murder this one and murder that one. Talking all that bullshit. I'm gonna put it to you like this, yo.
This is for the nerds, this is for the brainiacs, this what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back, you ain't gonna touch me, you not gonna do nothing, you are not above me. I bet you wish you was me, I know it, I know.
What is poppin', everybody? And welcome back to another special episode of the Only Friends podcast. Well, you know, it's me and my only friends, which includes, but is not limited to, the Squid Master. What's poppin', Berk?
I prefer Squidward.
Squidward, okay.
They call me Squidward.
The unbearable.
Squidward the insufferable.
Squidward the insufferable, yeah. That's me.
What's poppin', Berk? How you feeling?
I love, maybe Durr was onto something.
What's that?
I love the Squid Game.
I mean,
It might get you an ambassadorship at the poker site too.
Whatever happened to that?
That's what I'm saying.
He's with ACR? When? Where is Durr?
He's playing Squid Game.
wait, how is he not playing yesterday?
How is he a part of, he's an ambassador for 6 different sites and nobody's seen him physically in months?
It's basically NIL deals.
Right.
You know,
Well, that's what Ivey's on right now, for sure.
You know, when Xuan enters a game, he probably is not allowed to leave for 3 months.
They just lock him up.
They just have, everybody just locked in the basement somewhere, some casino, something, and just, they just play it out.
Have you guys heard of Squid Game?
We play for 3 months straight. You want to join us?
I got to tell you, man, Squid is this is the version we played is the most dangerous version for sure. It's
It's tournaments. It should be kind of. It just plays like a
Can I
tournament.
start with a confession to make?
Sure.
I have a confession to make.
Oh God,
Uh-oh.
I was a bad professional yesterday.
what'd you do?
I did not go play the Prime like I was supposed to.
More importantly, you skipped the podcast to go play the Prime.
Correct. I skipped the podcast to say I'm going to go play the Prime from hand one because this is an important tournament to
Fucking
play.
Judas.
And then I sleep in, I was tired. And then I was like, you know what? I have a newfound or rekindled addiction to Magic the Gathering Arena.
No way. Over Magic the Gathering.
This is all Jesse's fault.
I was gonna go. So I have also.
Anyways, it's 12:30. I'm still drafting. The podcast is over. And Matt hears me screeching from the room and just opens the door and goes, "What are you doing here?"
I was so mad. I'm so mad. He didn't show up to a really good pod that he could have contributed to. And then on top of it, he's costing me money by sitting in his room screeching at one of his fucking buddies he's screaming.
I love Magic the Gathering Arena, man.
Get a job, mate.
Or just go to your job.
I didn't go to my job to play Magic the Gathering Arena.
So you maxed late, Reg. Got punished.
Well, I didn't max. If I maxed, I would have been there longer. I got in. I busted the first hand in my first bullet. And then I lost Queens of Kings on the second. And I did my job. But you did your job better than I did. So thank you.
I accepted bountiful gifts. Sometimes
really
the world... I
was a bad professional. I'm sorry.
It provides, and you just have to be there to. I was talking to somebody on break.
You
I don't know.
manifested.
Maybe it was Marcus or somebody, but I was like, it might have been Marchie.
Good graphic.
I was like, I kind of look like him a little bit.
You actually do.
Handsome Squidward.
Let me try to get the nose a little.
Wow, we found your Halloween costume.
No shorts and a shirt.
I would love that. I tried to. I was thinking about all the hands that I played yesterday, and I was telling Marchie, I was like, man, it's gonna be tough sledding for me to get paid for the next couple of weeks because every single overbet that I made yesterday, I had it.
Not yet.
And it wasn't because I don't have bluffs in these nodes, but it was just because I just happened to have it in spots where overbet was necessary. There was a spot where Rips folded top pair 9 kicker on ace king 8 where I just went 3 on flop after 3-betting kings. And it's I just kept saying my board because it is it's a board that when you 3-bet out of the blind and get called by the cut, you have 3E as an option here. So I went pot planning the pot jam river and he made a tightish fold with ace 9 on it. I'm sure the hand mixes, but
It was on. He folded turn.
yeah, he called pot on the flop, which like once he calls flop, you just kind of know you got him, you know, because it's like,
That's the beauty of having 2 kings and not 2 aces.
well, you would never pot aces, but yes, fair point. It's more the beauty of having kings and not ace king, right?
That's true.
Because like ace king will still mix in pot a little bit, but what are you hoping to get called by? Eights, you know. But it's like once you arrive on turn, it's like, okay, he has an ace, or he has like a hand that had outs plus backdoors. So like king X of the backdoor, which I unblocked, which was really nice. I had like the combo of kings.
Nice.
And then, you know, he'll have like some jack 10 suited, queen 10 suited, whatever, that's probably going to have to fold turn if it didn't turn a flush draw.
Yeah.
So, you know, you just like live with the results or whatever. But I was like thinking back to all of those spots, and it's like, man, I overbet probably like 6 or 7 times today, and I just had nuts every fucking time. And I guess that's good because I'm not going to change the way I play. And if people were watching in Bobby's room, like I'm going to show up with fucking 5-4 in that exact same spot and just rifle it.
Well, that's the whole idea about balance, right?
Balance.
Big balanced guy.
Big balance guy. Yeah. Yeah. We tried to do a lot of balancing these last 3 days.
Sometimes you just only get value and it looks like you're scamming everyone. And
I
then
scammed a lot of people.
They think you're nitty because you get aces against their ace 10.
Yeah.
Against their ace 10.
I scammed a lot of people the last 3 days.
You scammed Wagons real bad.
I scammed him really bad. We'll talk about that. I actually have a little bit of remorse over that one.
I mean, you scammed the rules of the game as well.
Well, sort of.
What is Wagons'
little
real
loose
name?
and fast. Dylan. If you guys would like to scam us back, though,
His real name is Wagons.
if you'd like to scam us back, we're giving back based off of this recent upswing. Head over to solveforwhy.io. Take a half off month on me.
Take a half off, mate.
Just use code SQUID. 2 full seasons of Poker Out Loud stand-up game if you want to know what I know and get in the lab a little bit for these carnival games.
When's your Squid course coming out?
I don't know.
Probably never. Don't worry about the Squid course.
I got some secrets.
Oh,
that's for
shit.
sure.
Well, you have ideas.
Yeah, I would consider them to be secrets-ish.
Well, some people...
They're not proven, but yes, they're ideas.
Yes, it is you versus the collective, but currently you're winning.
I don't know. I think the collective might agree with me on a lot of stuff.
There might be some middle ground.
I think Brewer and I see it similarly. I think he might be a little bit more rigid in the way that he views the model, but I think we see it very similarly. It really is just it's a game of SPR. That's like the simplest way to put it.
Yeah, you can manipulate a lot.
Right.
Also, your opening sizes should definitely be variable and change.
Especially
based off
when you start to deal with multipliers.
Like, I liked your ace king off raised to 5K.
Oh, yeah.
That was nice.
So dirty.
Marcus thought about jamming or something with
Yeah.
queen 8 suited.
Yeah. I did it on day 1 too. Or day 2 rather. When I like immediately sat. It was when I like immediately sat down and just like
If you
ran it way
won that hand, you were getting the bonus, was the idea?
Yes. Yeah.
Right, so you're more incentivized to win pre.
Which he'll be doing with a lot of other hands. Is it the thought?
That's really more of what it is.
Yeah.
I'm 100% V-pipping that spot.
Never
so I'm
not.
playing deck.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of how I play deck. So
And you're going to have different raise open sizes?
I would have one open size and limps, I think.
It's always going to be big too because
Yeah, I think there's no reason in that spot where you're playing deck to open to like 1K.
Yeah.
You're just better off limping. Because they're like it's an interesting thing in a spot where like you can actually kind of be pretty heavily unbalanced, or you could choose to balance if you like. It doesn't really matter. But the point is that once you limp, they're so terrified to reopen because you're so incentivized to
Limp pile,
Yeah.
limp
Right.
3-bet.
So like now they either need to be confident that you're going to pile too wide and then they just reopen like queen jack for value, or they have hands that are like happy to call all ins and then you don't pile a lot because you just need to see 3 and try to fuck them.
You know, this game is great for you, and it's for many reasons, but one of them is that you're very confident in the things that you think you know. And a part of that is very scary to play against when you're shoveling in a lot of money and some people don't know what's going on at all.
No one knew what was going on.
But you think you know, which is worth a lot.
I think you guys... when
I'm
you
not
say,
saying you're
when
wrong.
you say things like that, I think you think that like
I think it's the definition of a backhanded compliment, right?
No.
it wasn't even a compliment.
Well, no, what I'm saying is like you have a plan. Whether it's right or wrong,
Yeah.
you have confidence in a plan.
Yes.
Most people have no plan.
Yes, that I agree with. That's very different than saying that like I'm confident in what I know. Like I don't know anything. I don't think anyone knows anything.
But sometimes you play like you have.
I'm very confident in my ability to understand how the people at the table are thinking about spots. Are you having an aneurysm?
No, he's signaling to me off the air.
You know we have whiteboards for this.
Oh, I don't have one.
It's you sit there like a fucking lump on a log for 85% of the show.
You just keep it down. If you didn't bring any goddamn attention to it, it
How
would
can I
just
not?
fine.
You're over there like a fucking airline guy on the runway.
I'm not
like,
talking to you. Mind your goddamn
really
business.
distracting.
The worst part about this impromptu CSA is that it's not even that big of a deal, man.
No, of course. Oh, I don't know.
It's something to think about.
Yeah, I don't know what it's about.
I
but-
think after the past 3 days, anybody that has watched the stream would like to play in the game with you.
no one's ever not gonna want to play with. I give all the fucking. Ling Ling texts me and she goes, "You're the best. You played every hand. You gave all the action and you won the money."
If anything, this is going to get him into more games.
And she goes, "Playing Bellagio tomorrow?"
Hell yeah, brother.
Hell yeah, brother. Hell
Let's
yeah.
go. But that's what I mean. I didn't mean it negatively. I just mean like you have a plan. We don't know if it's good or not, but it seems like it's working out great.
Yes, I think that's an accurate way to put it. All right, to your point of like I have a lot of confidence in quote unquote what I know. I do have a lot of confidence in some mechanics of poker that just inherently tend to be true, right? Like, you know, we have a course on Solve for Why that I started to build out. I haven't quite finished it yet, but I swear to you, it's coming by end of the year, maybe January-ish. Mid Stakes Bible, and the like core portion of it, the very first few lessons, is about taking theoretical principles and utilizing them to freestyle your thinking. So it's building mental models, right? And the core principles that we're operating off of are very simple. It's EV, and then the things that derive EV, like the components of that equation, which are going to be positional advantage, range advantage, SPR, these types of things, right? Those are inherent to every poker game that you play. They're always going to be incredibly important. And what I think most don't seem to understand about Squid is that it is like the way those three things interact with the bounty. SPR is like the driving force of this game.
And the incentives you have with or without the
Correct.
token.
Right. So your incentives drastically change. There's a lot of situations where you're already safe and you have no shot of getting the bonus, or no one has any shot of getting the bonus. And now your desire to like play a bunch of pots is very, very, very low. There are other situations where like you have 2 tokens and the bonus is 5, but you're the only one who has a path to getting it, and people are like sleeping, you know? So like there were spots, like I'm sure you can go back and look, where I'm opening like 4K under the gun in spots where I just don't think I'm getting a heavy resistance,
right?
Because there's still 8 squids left or 7 squids left, and they're just kind of like, I'll win the next one.
Right. It's kind of like a mutually shared risk where they think, okay, I don't need to call with this hand because somebody else will call, and then they're thinking
it's the multi-way MDF, right? The burden always ends up falling on the last person when everybody else passes their burden off. And it's the exact same thing with bounties.
They're doubling it and giving it to the next one. And
Bro,
then
I can't tell you how many times like Xuan would be folding and going, "Come on, guys, we got to play defense." With like 3 people left to act behind.
You know what that is? That's someone that plays werewolf a lot.
I said that on day 2. I was like, Schwann's the wolfiest. Or maybe it was day 1. We were explaining the squid.
Come on, guys, we need defense while you're sitting there with 4 tokens. Like, yeah, guys, you're doing great.
I think it was day 1. Or no, it was day 2. We were explaining the squid to Marchington. And there was a situation where like he had a squid, and I think like
Oh, I remember this.
It was the very first one. Both of us were like vying for the bonus.
It was something about a hand not being important to him.
I was basically saying like it's not important for you to win this. I was being honest, but it wasn't important to him. But that doesn't mean that like his incentives align with everyone else's. It was important to everybody else.
It made Xuan really mad.
I know, because like it truly wasn't important to him, but it was important to everybody else that it was important to him.
Right. You
know
guys
what I mean?
argued the semantics on this for at least 2 minutes, and she was just like, it is kind of important. It's kind of important to everybody else.
It was a werewolf standoff because it was really important to her that he fights for pots. But the truth of the matter was it did not matter to him, and it wasn't like he wasn't gaining any EV by defending the honor of the collective. Right. You know what I mean? I think that's what it was. I had already won the bonus, and he was safe. That's exactly what it was.
Ooh.
I had already won the bonus, and he was safe.
So you're working on multipliers.
So I'm working on multipliers, and I'm going to him. I go, it's truly not important. There's
You're
no
safe.
reason.
You don't have to pay.
Yeah, I was like, there's no reason for you to get involved in this mess. You are safe. You're on my team, buddy. You know,
You and me, we're together here.
We're fucking these guys over.
Sit back and watch the ride.
Sure. I'm like, sure, you know, if you win another token, you'll get a multiplier on it, but what's $500 between friends? I can scoop like 16K. And he kind of understood that. And Xuan's like, no, it is important to him. And I go, it really isn't. She goes, he can win another $500. I go, yeah, but like, at what cost? Because I'm going for 16K, and it's not going to be cheap.
That's kind of the really cool thing about Squid Game, and for the people that want the textbook kind of poker they don't get, is that the variables change so much and there's no actual solution. Like there's no answer key to this.
Right. Yeah. No, that's very true. And yeah, I think the best that we can do is very similar to the conversation. You missed it, but the conversation we had. Oh no, maybe you were here. The one we had with Jesse. Yeah, you were here for that. With like multi-way and stuff like that. It's like we have ideas.
We do have ideas,
and
but
we
like
can model it somewhat.
Marchington defending, call it the honor of the group, to make you pass on 16K might cost him more than the 500
Precisely.
he might make in the long run.
The only incentive so when I say he has no incentive to play, I mean he has no incentive to step outside of his normal structure game.
Stay in your lane, Marchie.
No. It's just he has no incentive to expand.
But he has huge incentive to make pots big or play big pots with you when he
knows
has
on why.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, of course.
And
so it's like
that's the exact spot where you're
right.
100%
So
wide.
without like delving into the deep details on stream, it's like I'm just saying out loud what he and I both understand. It's like you have no incentive to fuck with me outside of knowing that I'm too wide, and you can either just play your normal range and take advantage of it naturally when the spot comes, or you could try to get wide with me, knowing that we're going to go to battle and we're basically going to like fight over a 0.5% edge, playing range against each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're making more though in this spot.
Well, because of the bounty, but he's making more because of position. And
he's in position on you in this one? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So it you know, it's a give and take, but it's also one of those things where it's like he's then additionally running the risk of having people behind him who need to win pots more than I do
to make themselves safe.
Exactly.
It
so
doesn't
it's
just
like
end with you two.
Right. So like I would imagine the settled equilibrium is that his strategy is fixed at normal chip EV, where if he's playing optimally, he doesn't. It might even be slightly tighter.
Like there's a risk for him to get involved when someone could wake up.
He has a small risk premium on him, I think. Right? Because the player opening, which is me, is already too wide. And then the players behind him are meant to be incredibly aggressive to win the pot.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know the answers, but it could be possible that someone, depending on like their stack depth, can like see an ace in their hand and just be all in.
Probably should.
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
like you get to realize your equity this way. If they both fold, you're safe, and that's fine. And if you run it, you can't be that big of a dog versus someone playing deck.
Exactly.
But like
And
that's hard to find out in real time, and you're risking so much money, and you might just be wrong.
He's risking infinite because I'm not going to open for 800. I'm going to open for 4,000.
Yeah.
Right? And now it needs to be like I need to have enough EV in whatever decision I choose to make here that I'm stealing this pot often enough, you know, without resistance.
It's a sick game.
And like you're getting resistance. Like we're 200,000 effective, you know, whatever.
And well, yeah. And then I don't know the positions exactly, but like when you open and then someone needs to defend, they might be losing a bunch of money trying to like if Big Blind doesn't have a token and you open, they probably have to defend deck.
Yeah.
For
So-
sure, deck.
So if they fold,
Because
you're
like
printing.
folding is minus $4,500.
Right. And now they have to play this huge pot
Yeah.
out. Like it gets so big because they might just like fold, but they flop no equity
Right.
and then also pay you again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost like you created this game.
It happens. An agent of chaos. It happens a lot in all-in spots too, where like there was a spot where Dylan had to call an 18K all-in or something like that.
Oh yeah, to win 12K.
Where if he won the bonus, and if he lost that pot plus the additional money on the bonus. And it's got to be close.
I think it was 38,000. It was.
He
you're
lost
right.
the
It was
first
Oaken's
board.
all in.
He
Yeah.
won the second board.
It wasn't Oaken, it was Marcus, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was before Oaken sat.
Yeah, he rivered the second
he
board.
He rivered an 8, yeah. I think
Yeah.
it was like ace-x versus 10-8 off or something.
Yeah.
something
And it's just like, yeah, you can't fold anything because you're winning way too much money if you win board 1.
too much layover.
Yeah.
And
Very true.
then you're just running it twice, so it's like, all right, you have a chance to whatever chop.
This game plays a lot bigger than people think it does.
It's fucking huge.
It's I said, like, I benefited from it.
You're built for this game.
I benefit. It reminds me of when short deck first got introduced, right? Like, I don't think it was pure luck or accident that I had that massive run up the first like month that it was being spread.
Got the pool.
Yeah. I did the same thing there. I didn't reload these 3 days. I bought it for 50,000 one time, and that was it.
Yeah, thankfully you scooped Justin, so you didn't have to do
I
it.
scooped Justin, thankfully. I scooped Ivey yesterday, thankfully. I don't remember. Oh, I scooped Rampage on day 1 or day 2 rather.
You scooped wagons of the aces. I mean, we'll talk about it later, but sure.
Jesus, you had a lot of
but I'm saying like
fucking
my
scoops.
initial buying. Yeah, there was a lot of them. But anyway, the point is like when new game formats introduce themselves, they aren't solved yet. That's abundantly clear. So like that window of time where everybody is forced to freestyle, this is going back to your original point of like you have so much confidence. I'm very confident in my ability to determine what's going on at the extremes of a new game format.
Yeah, so
like,
it was not a slight for me to
no,
say.
I understand, but like the way you worded it made it seem like as if like I think that I have perfect answers to things.
No.
I don't. I think I just understand where games break, like where the breaking points are, and then my ability to freestyle within that framework, I feel very good about.
Again, you're also not playing the solved version of the game in your opposition.
Well,
So you could be doing,
yeah.
call it bad things solved-wise, but good things oppositionally.
right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
It's not saying that, and one might be better than the other. Like playing your way might make more money, at least for
At
now.
least now.
At
Yeah.
least for now.
Yeah.
And fortunately, now is now.
Right.
Great 3 days, man.
Yeah,
We're
it went-
loving it.
It went
Pretty
well.
fucking
It was
sick.
it was a good time.
We're loving it.
What is that?
It's a scoop.
Yeah, it's a scoop.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to play that format all the time.
Squid?
Yeah,
Why?
Yeah, it seems.
I'm not
profitable.
rich enough.
That's valid. I mean, those stakes for sure. I mean,
you just.
I think I hold this opinion and I feel very strongly about it. I think that the proper way to play that game, or at least one way to play that game correctly that we were in the last 3 days, is to like sit with 100K and be all in a lot pre.
that's what I was thinking. And I was talking to Marchington about this and saying, I think that the way to play against someone with your style and V-pipping a lot of the deck, especially when you're aware of the incentives, isn't to try to fight you in heads-up pots, but
Right.
just be all in and deny your equity or force you to call it off with 10-9 suited
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah, because then it, and again, it reminds me of like the short deck when at first, like we weren't certain of how the equities changed when you remove 5 cards from the deck kind of thing.
You can lose so much money in this game if you lose all-ins.
Well, that's my point.
That's
Is like
fucking
that's why
insane.
I specifically said like you don't actually have to sit with 100K, but like what I'm basically saying is like I view it as like 100K buy-in type of game format, and one in which the qualifier to get 100,000 in pre is not that high. Like stacking off 100K pre with 10s seems very reasonable to me
Or like
in this format.
one of the best things you can do, which is like vulture rat aesthetic, is to sit as short as you can, like not rebuy, and find ways to be all in
That's not my point. I agree with you. I'm saying I view it as a 100K buy-in game. So even if you're buying in for 20K, it doesn't matter. The volatility of it is going to be such that like your standard deviation is going to be like 3x 100K maybe, or 2x 100K, something along those lines. Like I don't know exactly. It's difficult to measure because like the big blinds don't really effectively matter that much.
No,
it's kind of like an ante-only game almost.
With varying sizes of opens.
That's why I said it's like an ante-only game.
Yeah.
Right? Because like if you're playing a $5 ante-only game, you can open anywhere from 10 to infinite.
Right.
But there's, $200 dead in the middle or $100 dead in the middle.
I guess I mean like the open size is not static. Like if you're playing a $5 ante game, you're mostly going to like pick a size and run with it.
Yeah, because the incentives are different.
Yeah. That's what I'm getting at is like, if you have tokens, you might raise bigger. If you don't, you might raise smaller.
Sure. Yeah, that's all valid. But like, eventually it will iterate down to the extremes where you're just playing limp and large size. Like the range of sizes that you can open, sure, they're there to manipulate human nature. But I think eventually like you just ultimately land on a large size and a limp. There isn't really a reason to have like a min raise or a 3x. You know what I mean? Like it's just how they respond.
Yeah, I just think I remember from seeing you play, your open size for big open wasn't always 5K.
No. Of course, it varied. But again, I'm just preying on the response, right? Like if I think that they're going to respond the same way to 2K as they will to 4K, then I'm going to go 2K.
Because the variables are moving every hand.
Right. And if it's an instance where like it's a highly leveraged spot where they have to play stronger defense than they would in any other situation, because if I win this pot, I get the bonus.
20,000.
Now it's like I want to open to 5K and I want to I want this range to be very polar.
Yeah.
I don't want to have like 8-9 suited in this range very often.
I think a great example
of
a play that probably should not have worked as well as it did was Xuan jamming ace-5 suited.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
You know what I mean? Like it went limp.
3 hands that were supposed to call off folded.
It went like limp, call, then raise, and then she piled, and then king jack suited folded, king queen suited folded, pocket eights folded.
Wait, what?
I think the only fold that was excusable there was like March ace king jack suited.
The first one.
No, the first one was pocket eights.
Was it? Oh, was Isaac first?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And like I just think that's like a happy get in for 45K. That's what that's why I'm saying like I don't think people understand
how big
it is. Yeah. Like the SPR. So I think Oaken opened to 1,500. Or was Isaac the opener and Oaken?
There might have been some limpers and then an open and then a raise or like a 3-bet and then she piled.
Okay, so Oaken was the 3-better then. Because he was last act on the button. She was in the blinds. So it must have been like Isaac opened probably like 1K, something like that. Marchie flatted the king jack suited. Oaken 3-bets, let's call it 5K. She now jams for 45,000 or something along those lines. I guess from that perspective, like now the 8s becomes a little bit more clear of a fold because Oaken is a 3-better. I thought it was just a 3-bet jam. So like now 8s and king jack, of course they're going to have to fold. But like you could just never fold king queen suited here.
Your equity runs too close.
It's not even just that. It's like just look at the SPR, right? There's 7,000 plus her 5K in the middle, so 12,000 in the middle, and she's jamming for 3 SPR. Just equate that to tournament terms. If you're looking at like a raise to 2.2 and a 3-bet to 7, the original raiser can 4-bet jam up to 100 bigs almost, which is now going to be like nearing 10 SPR. So it's like if you can jam upwards of 10 SPR with like a pretty tight range, certainly for like 3 SPR, you're very wide and linear, especially when there's a bounty on top of it where you have to win this pot. So it's like the C ace-5 suited there is like, that's like upper middle.
Yeah.
Like Broadways should be eating it. All pairs, ace highs. There's this range is probably like 18%, maybe a little bit less.
Right.
Just depending on like her view of like having fold equity versus like how often is Marchie trapping, that type of stuff, because that stuff has to happen, of course, because the jams should be coming so frequently. But we're just like way off.
Everybody's just like spitballing what they think is good and not good. and then it leads to spots like that.
It does make me think I'm better at MTTs than I give myself credit for.
Yeah, I knew this for a long time.
Because like this stuff is just
like you know how poker works. Like you know how a game works. That's important.
Yeah, but like I feel like the things I'm best at, I don't get to.
I feel like your discipline
execute
lacks,
on.
though.
Oh yeah, of course.
But like for MTTs, like you got to have discipline.
Yeah. That's the problem is you don't get the chip lead in MTT all the time, and that's what it felt like yesterday.
Even if you have the chip, like you gotta. Sometimes you just gotta coast. You know, you gotta navigate. You're not much of you're a feast or famine kind of guy.
Well, no, it's not that. It's just that like when the incentives align to where like a bubble where you're chip leading, you don't coast. You just ramp and play 100% of hands. You know, and that's what it felt like yesterday, where it's like, okay, I'm going to get the VPET deck pretty much every spot. Like I was just like, I think I won the bonus in Squid 7 times over 3 days.
One of my favorite hands was when it was like limps, and then like I think you over limped, and then like Xuan ISO'd king queen suited, and then everyone else folded. You were on the button and you peeled. You had like 10-6 off, and the board came like 8-3 deuce red, and she checked, and you're like, you know what? B25, and she folded, and you just windmill the 10-6 off and get the coin, and I'm like, this is great.
Did I limp that hand? I think I opened and she called.
I think no, she was the aggressor and then check folded.
I don't think that's true. I talked about this hand with a couple other people last night. I'm almost positive she flatted pre.
I will.
Which,
see.
As you can see, becomes a bit of a problem because now when you miss, I think it was like
my whole main idea was that people tried to fight you by playing post.
Your idea is correct.
And trapping with like good hands.
Yeah.
But you forget that it's hard to make a pair and no limit hold'em.
Well, that's why you have to continue to fight. Like that's where I think the big post flop edge comes in Squid is people not understanding. It's like they know that the ranges are really, really wide pre and then forget that post. Or they misapply it by thinking like, oh, since the ranges are really wide pre, then they make like a pair a lot more often post. So like 8-3 deuce isn't the safe board that it usually is in a normal scenario. And it's like, yes, that's true. You do make a pair more often, but you also miss much more often. So the ratio of like, you know, pair to no pair is still going to be relatively the same. But, you know, to your point, I think that...
I found it. Oh my God, amazing. Oh, so you're in the cutoff and you raise the 3K.
Yeah. And she just traps.
And then she calls.
Yeah.
And then
just has a check fold on 8 high.
Yeah. Right. Where I think the best thing to do with king queen is probably just be all in.
Of course.
Like
or be really sticky
post.
post.
What is the timestamp on that, Lando?
5 minutes 35 5 hours 35 minutes 43 seconds.
Yeah, or you have to just be like really sticky post. Like I played a hand versus Dylan where I don't think anyone else in that game, maybe only Marchie, would have played it this way.
The 10-8?
No, the King Jack of clubs. So this, I think in this particular instance, this can't be the right hand.
It's 535, not 525. So like it's the hand after this one. So it's like fast forward 10 seconds.
Gotcha.
Look at all those good hands. Nobody's all in pre.
If you click the right arrow, yeah, there you go.
Oh, Isaac tried.
Yeah.
He made it 20K pre. Good job. That's
There we
a good
go.
one.
This one.
I think it comes monotone too,
It
which
does,
makes
yeah.
it brutal.
It reduce red.
Yeah, I mean, that's
But I
not
think-
what you're looking for, you know? But you have to fight.
Yeah.
You just have to fight and know that, like, there are going to be some bad turns and rivers. Well, like, what I think people miss is, like, making a king of hearts here is a good hand still. There was a hand I played against Xuan later where I, like, limp queen 4. She ISOs, I call, and if I win the bonus. I limp queen 4 off. She ISOs, I call. It comes, like, Jack 10-8, all diamonds.
I remember this one, yeah.
And I have like queen 4, no diamond, check, turn queen of diamonds, and I'm never folding. It doesn't matter what happens over the next 2 streets outside of like an outlandishly large bet. I'm just never folding.
You win too much.
Yeah.
If you win the hand.
Right. So turn goes check again. River's a brick, and I value bet. I bet 1,000 into like 2K.
Quote, this is so stupid.
Right.
Pay, lose. Get the bonus.
Right. And now I get the bonus. It's like I get the value bet there because she has to try to defend. She can't just like willingly give me the bonus there for nothing. If you scroll a little bit further, I think you'll find the hand that I'm about to reference
Like,
against
I
Dylan.
think the king queen should just like either 3-bet and deuce,
Obviously,
or be all in.
of
like,
course,
like just not play that node.
Yeah, it should never be a single raise pot, of course.
Right.
That goes without saying. Like, you have to be. There are certain hand qualifiers that you just have to stack off with, and the threshold's so much lower than people understand.
A king queen off should probably just be all in here.
For sure. These hands are really fucking good. They're hard to get.
And
Like there's times to trap, but not like when you're closing action or when there's only one player behind who's probably not jamming all that often. What the hand against Dylan that I thought was like pretty fascinating was I think Xuan opened to 1K, Isaac called, Dylan squeezed the button to 5K and did not have a token yet, and I have King Jack suited in the small blind. And it's like I could 4-bet here, but we were really deep. I think we were like 120 effective. So like,
this one he had Queen Jack off.
Yeah, the only real 4-bet size I think would have to be jam because I can't 4-bet call. The hand's just too weak. And I just decided that like I'm going to play overcalls here with a pretty wide range because we're still playing squid. So I'm just treating this as a single open. I'm treating their opens as like limps basically, and this is a single open.
Right.
So I just call.
If he doesn't have a token, I think playing a jam is also a valid strategy.
I think it's valid. Yeah, it's
You're
a lot
just
of
jamming
variance.
so much money.
Yeah,
like,
of course, it's a lot of variance, but you live and die by the sword.
Someone did that with King
So
King
anyway,
suited.
maybe my cold call is not good. Maybe it is good, but the point is like my plan was to have a cold calling range here and just treat the original razors as basically like limps.
Yeah, it's tough when you're out of position.
It's not. It's really not because you just recognize that like the SPR is small. You know, I think we had an SPR of like 7 going post. It's like this is a single raise pot, button versus. You know, maybe I give him a little bit tighter range, but it's squid, so he's still wide.
Well,
it's just like button versus small blind.
And your plan, if you cold call and someone reaggresses with a 4-bet, is to.
Well, Xuan only had 45K, so I would call that off. And if Isaac somehow back jams, he's trapping. You know,
hits you with the New York back raise.
Right. So it's just like I don't really have a lot to concern myself with here. I don't think so. I cold call, they both fold, and that's the other thing is like they don't defend their 1K often enough either. So I don't go multi-way here. Like there isn't really a hand that should have put $1,000 in there that folds.
Right.
Right? Because it's not like we both have really tight ranges. Yes, I'm trapping sometimes, but it's squid, so who cares? You have position on me. You take a flop. So it comes ace 9-7, rainbow, none of my suits. I check, Dylan bets quarter pot. My initial instinct was like, oh, I should check raise here. You have to check raise here because like
his range is too wide.
His range is too wide and you just benefit so much by winning now. But then I thought about it longer and I was like, well, I think his range is wide, but I don't think it's like dusty. So I think he touches this board too often. Like the 9 and the 7 along with ace high make it really hard for him to have an auto fold, right? Most pairs are going to continue.
And you also dominate a lot of the
Exactly. I dominate
hands.
all of his broadways with the exception of king queen, right? I'm dead to an ace, which is never folding. The other pairs I have no ability to put pressure on. So any 9x and 7x is also floating me. Also, all backdoor hands are going to float because he doesn't have a squid. He has to fight. So it's like I don't even get to apply pressure to a hand like 5-6 that's drawing to the ass end of the gutty. So I just don't see what I'm folding out here. And I decide that call is better because I just dominate a lot of his range and making a pair is pretty good. Also, he might just like not follow through with turn barrels all that often outside of having an ace because he needs to get to showdown too. That's the other incentive that's missed in squid is you want to get to showdown a lot when you have a hand that shows down. You don't want to reopen the action and then face raise. It's very dangerous to reaggress, you know? So turns the king of hearts, bringing backdoor hearts, ace and king of hearts are matching. I check, he checks back, and it's like, okay, we have the best hand for sure. There's just sometimes I run into king queen here, but like que sera, sera.
Or like some ace X wants to get the showdown. Like he's not always going to barrel an ace, but
Right.
you have a very great hand now.
Yes.
We're happy.
River, jack of spades.
We're even happier.
We're even happier. So now it's obvious I have the best hand, and I get to go for value here a lot. But I do think that like some of the time he has queen 10 here because again he has.
I thought he was going to jam on you.
I would have snapped.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have been happy about it, but it's just like I beat all value that isn't queen 10. Like he doesn't have ace jack here, and I think he could value jam like jack 9.
Right. I think.
But my bigger point is I choose block over a larger size because like obviously he has to bluff catch. He doesn't have a token.
And he doesn't have an ace very often in your mind, so his range is weak.
Exactly. So his range is weak, but I think he has a lot of queen X and 10X in that range that's a pair. And that's exactly what he had. So I go block, he goes big, I go snap, and he has a losing hand. And this to me is like a clear definition of a hand that would not exist in theory under normal constructs. Like you would fold the non-backdoor. If this were just a single raise pot, you wouldn't really defend very hard here with king jack of clubs. You would defend harder with all the other backdoors. And maybe like this one would check raise a small frequency, and that's where that instinct was coming from. But you'd be against a much tighter range. Yes. You know, like it wouldn't be 100% C bet from that range, and it also wouldn't be as wide as it is. So like things are moving parts, and just being able to identify when you're much closer to the top of range with no pair than you realize allows you to now navigate 3 streets and get the maximum versus a hand that you dominated the whole way through. Now, of course, I got very lucky for that run out. Turn could have just been a deuce and he could have fired again. I might have called. I don't know. But the point is like I didn't have a tough spot. I had a very easy one where I snapped turn in my mind with his top pair and then a river 2 pair.
I think the queen jack bluff from him is a good recognition that he does not win on the end, because if you have like tiny pair, you just try to go to showdown and hope you win somehow, because you can't just start betting everything in your range.
Right.
So I thought he was going to pile. I just think that jam is probably like the best size for him.
In that game, I think jam is always better in all instances.
Just because like he's literally repping a straight or aces.
Yep.
You know, like that's, and you have like.
But I think that's why he lands on a non-jam size, because he knows he's repping too thin for value, and there are too many bluffs available because it's squid.
I mean, you have to actually take the action by jamming, though.
I understand, but like the way the mind works is you choose the action where you could fit more value into it.
Right.
Like you can comfortably tell yourself, I would have played ace jack this way.
Which he would have.
Maybe.
Yeah.
If he got there with it. I don't know how often he barrels ace jack on the turn.
Sure.
Pretty heavily incentivized to barrel ace jack, though. King is a non-factor, right? Like giving up a street of value with ace jack just to have a protected range. That dynamic seems like a lot. It's a big ask.
Yeah.
You could say like, all right, play jacks this way. It's like, yeah, okay, maybe, but like you could also just jam jacks.
On the end.
Yeah.
I would think that like your range there is just going to be set straight.
Yeah.
And then is what it is. Like he had a good one for it. Like he blocked your 2 pairs on the river, which you somehow had, but that's life.
Yeah. He had a great bluff candidate.
Yeah.
For sure.
I like
executing was good.
I think jam is just so risky though. Again,
it always is. But that's why I'm saying
not for the same amount of money. Like he would have jammed 200K or something. Like,
no, this was after aces.
Is it? Was it?
It would have been for like 90,000.
Right. Still a lot, right?
It's a lot, but that's the thing, is it? You know, we got to the river.
It is in dollars.
We got to the river at 3.5 SPR, and I blocked. It's like, no, this is a pretty standard shove spot.
Yeah.
But it's just a lot of dollars, and that's my point. Like people who sign up to play a 100 or 200 game that sit with 100K are not expecting to constantly have 100K at risk. But the adjustment in Squid is understanding that like 50K goes in smooth, baby. I limp jammed those 8s versus Ivey thinking that this is as good as kings. All right, I'm sorry, I raised 4-bet jammed them. Which was very weird because it's very clear that Phil plays a lot of Squid, but his demeanor like always comes off like he's confused. He's never confused, by the way. He's always fucking locked in. And you know, I opened 8s under the gun, which I kind of immediately regretted. I had opened the hand before with king 9 off under the gun 1 and got squeezed off of it. So usually I would play limp in that spot, 8-handed or whatever we were, but I was like, I just opened the last one and folded. That's going to increase the value of 8s to me here. So I'm going to open this time instead and see if I can, you know, just play an all-in pot here. I only have 50K. Like, it's not that big of a deal to get it in. He instantly 3-bets me, and it's like, all right, I just have to assume that he knows how the game works, and I'm just going to run it here. He's going to have better pairs sometimes, but we're going to flip a whole fuck lot, and he actually might have to call off with like 7 some of the time, especially because the game's not that big to him. I was surprised that he tank called ace jack, but he obviously just doesn't know anything about me either. Like, we've only played a couple times, and there's no way he could pick me out of a lineup. So he probably thinks I'm a lot stronger than I am in this instance.
If that's true, doesn't that make his ace jack more of a fold?
It just can't ever be a fold. It just
Too
can't.
much money.
It's we're playing way too small with $50,000. Yeah, it's just you can't put in 10,000 and fold ace jack. Like it's just to get in. And then he one-timed me. It's like, okay, well, this is gonna This is definitely going to dictate how the rest of my day goes.
They picked you.
Like losing this one, I'm going to have an uphill climb for sure. Luckily, it ran out clean, and I never really looked back. We can talk about the Dylan hand though really quickly because we got Barber waiting on the line. He's coming in 5 minutes, but I did want to address this because I feel fucking awful about what happened. I truly don't think it changes anything, and I know Dylan would say that like, oh well, I was gonna cold call that spot, and if I had, then maybe I could get away. But it's like, with how big the game is playing, getting away from kings pre-flop and squid just seems bad in any capacity. So anyway, the setup to the hand is Dylan and Rampage are heads up in squid. I think there are 3 hands left, but maybe only 2. And I'm still...
So everybody else has a token besides them?
Yes. And I'm viable to get the bonus. So I either have 3 or 4... Or sorry, I either have 2 or 3 tokens at this point.
There's no way you're kings at any point.
Right. So Rampage limps under the gun. John Isaac limps, I believe. No, maybe he folded. Dylan limps kings on the button, which is an interesting choice.
He went for the sneak attack.
Yeah, but I don't know why he thought that I would ISO so often against 2 people without buttons. That's not how the game works. Like, if I have bad hands here, I just happily see a flop and try to fuck them.
That's true.
I don't try to blow 2 people off the pot that don't have buttons. Rampage is obviously limping any 2, and Dylan looks weak limping on. I guess he just wants to protect that button range because he is limping range, or limping a lot of his range. But seems like a good spot to also just say, hey, my comrade who doesn't have a button just limped. I'm going to ISO him. I don't need to have kings to do so. Anyway, he limps. I make it 4,500. Marcus makes it 11,000. Rampage makes it 20K. Back it up a little bit. So we can show exactly what I'm remorseful of. So, okay, so here Rampage makes it 20K, which this is insane. And you can see I'm just staring at Rampage because I'm counting down his stack. And it didn't show for how long. You can back it up even further, maybe. So this whole time Dylan's in the tank, I have no idea he's in the hand. And look, I'm just like only looking ahead and at Rampage because I'm counting down his stack, trying to figure out what the best play is to get both his and Marcus's money.
But you forgot that Dylan had a hand.
Had no idea. I thought Dylan insta-folded.
Sounds like it's the sickest limp of all time from Dylan, man.
I mean, sure. This 4-bet by Rampage is so strange. Like, clearly just has to be all in.
Well, the ace queen off has to be all in to start.
Yeah, Marcus should have jammed for sure. He doesn't have that much. He only had 35,000. Like, that's a blatant jam.
But Ethan would have just probably flatted or rejammed or whatever.
He would have rejammed, and then
Dylan would have put the money in, and then you would have put the money
in,
in, and Ethan would have scammed you. On board 1.
We would have chopped the pot. But yeah, so now I call out of turn, which is obviously terrible because if I know Dylan's been tanking for 2 minutes, he has a very close decision. Now calling out a turn looks like I'm angling him to push me out of the pot.
Yeah.
Which is ultimately what he does with kings. He's like, oh, Berkey's going to cold call. I don't want that with Jack 10 suited. So, like, I don't really have another option here. So he jams. Obviously, I have aces. I snap. And I immediately go to him. I had no idea you were in the hand. Which basically just telegraphs to everybody else, like, obviously I have aces. But it should be obvious anyway. I just snapped a 120K jam. Rampage puts himself in some weird spot to, like, have to fold 8s. Which obviously he has to fold 8s at this point. Like,
he almost put the
money. I mean, is he getting... He's not getting the right price. It's like 40 to win 190, I think.
Someone has a bigger pair, and he's flipping if he's lucky.
30, 60, 60. Yeah. It's like 40 to win 150. So he's getting like 4 to 1, basically. It's close. I mean, he's getting close to the right price.
What were you and Dylan talking about right here?
I was telling him that I had no... He goes, I would have folded if you hadn't done that. And I think he's just like, look, I've been in that spot. Like, you're mad at the world. So, I mean, I would hope he knows that, like, that wasn't intentional.
I mean, you would just have ace-king and do the same thing. You would have queens and do the same thing.
Yes, I would have cold called with all those hands, for sure. Maybe not queens, but... No, I wouldn't have. I would have with kings and aces only. I don't think I cold call with queens and ace king. They're
Well,
just too vulnerable.
I mean, what do you do with like tens?
Tens I would cold call. Yeah.
I just mean like there's much more hands that
Yes,
Dylan
there are
dominates.
hands. There are hands that when Dylan jams, I fold, for sure. There's for sure hands that I would cold call and then fold.
There's also hands that you would cold call and then call that he's beating.
True. Not a lot though.
Well, yeah, he piled for $100,000.
Right.
He and Ethan are fighting.
It's really just like a low frequency cold call with like, ace king suited maybe. Basically, if I thought I had some sort of read on Marcus rejamming, which led to Ethan jamming, right? Like those would be the only instances where I'm trapping wider than like aces and kings.
I mean, what was Dylan's plan if he didn't see you do what you did?
He said he was going to call.
The 20,000?
Yeah.
And then you were going to pile?
If I knew he was in the hand and he cold called the 20,000, I probably would have raised. I don't know to what size.
The super New York back raise. This is unbelievable.
It's not a back raise. I opened.
Yeah.
Oh.
36,000.
Right.
It would have just been the six bet.
Like the open cold called New York back raise. The Pittsburgh back raise.
What cold call?
Well, like if Dylan, never mind, I'm being stupid.
Yeah, I don't know where.
Well, but you put the chips in the way you did.
Yeah, but
You turned
that's
it into a
because
fake cold
but
call.
that's because I didn't know Dylan was in the hand. If I knew he was in the hand, I don't put the chips in. He calls and then
You just raise.
I raise. Yeah.
So, hold him in, master.
You.
Where do you come up with this shit? I didn't steal someone's chips.
I don't know.
You guys are terrible with this.
I'm sure he does a bunch of things. When you steal chips, you don't stop there.
I mean, sure.
You're not helping. It's just brutal. Dylan's angry at the world. I mean,
well, he has every right to be. He got cooled off in a huge game after losing 200 plus the day before. Like he got most of it back in that session, and this is like, Dylan and I talk a lot. Like he's going through it some of the time. Like he was upswinging huge, which was long overdue. He had just been going through a big downswing. I've been going through a big downswing. Like we commiserate together. Yeah. It's unfortunate to have that type of shit happen, especially when it's for like significant amounts of money. You know what I mean?
It's a huge pot, but at the end of the day, like finding a fold with kings there is probably just like not even good for the bottom line, and it would have worked out because you had aces this time.
Right. And
it looks like in the moment, like, oh, like my plan was to call, and then if you jammed and Ethan put the money in too, I was gonna fold.
So in that particular instance, if that had played out, I'm jamming way wider than aces. Like, I don't care if it's bad or not. Like, I'm not shoving ace king there.
Exactly.
Like, Dylan cold calling Ethan's 20K, I don't think is only traps. I think it's a strong range, but I certainly don't think it's only traps, because what's he going to do with queens? He can't jam with me behind him. I mean, he could. He probably should.
Well, I mean, you're the opener, so you just have a lot of money too.
Right.
Maybe his plan was going to be to, instead of going all in for 200K, or was to like stone click it again to ISO Ethan.
He said he was going to call. I mean, whether that was honest or not, I don't know.
Yeah. Who knows? We
but
can
like
never know.
Stone clicking can't ever be a good thing, because you can't make it 33,000 and then fold to 120 with like the hands that would stone click. I mean, I guess you can. But like we're getting into territory here where we're lighting it, because like
mean,
now
Kings is not finding the muck, but just in general, like if Dylan has jacks here and doesn't want to play for all of it,
then I think it just like has to be cold call fold, right? Like why make it 33 and fold?
Well, the idea
is that like somehow you're a little bit stronger.
Well, the idea is like it kicks you out and forces you to not play a cold call.
That's what I'm saying
again.
Is I don't think that whether he cold calls or makes it 33 changes my decisions. I don't think like when he cold calls, I jam jacks. When he makes it 33, I fold jacks.
It's tough just because in dollars it's a lot, but the SPR now makes it super low.
What kicks me out is shoving. Right? Like when he shoves, I have to fold hands like jacks and probably queens, at least some of the time. But I also have to call those hands some of the time. Like he just called the button.
Yeah,
he just limped the button.
I think he would pay queens, man, because he could have jacks.
He could have ace king, and he could have jacks. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, like you're ISOing, I mean, not that many hands.
No,
because of the button
I
stuff.
have big pairs.
But when he limps and then goes for this like super play, it's not often going to be aces
or kings.
Kings.
Right, I agree.
So when you have queens, it's just like twice.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, just pray.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, there's just so many levels to this. There's so many dynamics. So like it was a really, really, really unfortunate spot that
And
I felt bad
obviously
about.
you would not have done this if you saw Wagons had cards.
No, of course not. Of course not. Like I don't need to do this. Like he has kings, you know? It's what am I inducing him to do? Jam with king queen suited? I mean, like I would have felt really fucking awful if that had happened.
Yeah.
Like I would have like
He just thinks that your money is dead and then repiles.
Yeah. But like, you know, what can you do, man? Like shit like that happens all the time.
Well, honestly, if you did that like unintentionally, which is what happened, and then he tried to take advantage of that by ISOing the king queen suited.
Well, it's not that he's taking advantage of it. He's just acting on new information.
Right. But if he was going to call it not have access to the information, he would play differently.
Right.
That
right.
information should never be given to him. Like if you play his hand online.
Yes. That's very fair. He's able to deduce from that what he will.
Yeah.
And you know, I would hope that he knows that like it's never an angle, and that's why he acts accordingly.
It's kind
if he thought it were an angle, he would just like muck kings.
It's kind of the same idea. Like if you're playing online, someone snap limps and they have aces, and you think, "Oh, that money's dead."
Right.
Like, you're acting on something you don't know is going to be true or not.
Yeah, I mean, sort of, but like they're at least doing it within the construct of being within the rules. We'll bring in an arbiter of the rules. One Andrew Barber. He's a good faith actor.
Did Matt cheat or not?
Did I cheat?
What's popping, Andrew?
What's going on, guys? I actually don't know the accusation here with the angle, but
okay.
my strong prior is that you didn't.
I'm accusing myself for what it's worth, and it's a little convoluted. But basically, we're playing Squid Game. Two people left that don't have buttons: Ethan and Dylan. Ethan limps. Dylan limps on the button. I make it 4,000, playing 100, 200 from the small blind. Marcus, who has 35K, makes it 11,000 from the big blind. Ethan then clicks it to 20,000 off of a 60K stack. And
how good do you run?
I know. And
Last 3 days, amazing.
yeah, 700K good, basically. And now Dylan and I are 120K effective. And he hasn't acted yet. But I didn't even shoot a glance in his direction. I had no idea he was still in the pot. I just thought he turbo mucked. So I spend like 2 minutes counting down Ethan's stack, trying to figure out if I want a cold call or jam. And I ultimately land on cold call. And I act out of turn by calling. Dylan has kings, realizes I have a cold call range that probably isn't aces, and shoves. And then obviously I just snap because I was trapping.
Yeah, I don't think any actions change regardless, right?
He said he was going to cold call the 20 if he didn't see me act out of turn, and then fold to my jam. But I think that like is pretty optimistic. Like I don't doubt that he would cold call the 20. I think it would be weird to fold to my jam.
Yeah. I mean, I think I heard the discussion you guys have about like whether there's value in clicking it versus calling 20. And I think I agree with you that this is one of the situations where I don't know if any information is gained and all hands play the same versus the click versus.
Yeah. I would have felt really bad if he had like some shit that he was running it with, like ace 5 suited or something like that, you know? Luckily,
setups, man. This game is full of setups. I don't think I wouldn't lose sleep over this.
Squid's crack cocaine, man. There's, you know, they package it as a nice little caffeine tablet, and then you just realize you're smoking crack, and now you're hooked. Everybody's fucking
poker
broke.
Has gotten more and more crack-like over the years. Like
this is what solvers did,
and PLO is way better than Hold'em, and then all of a sudden we started inventing all these little circus games.
Yeah, anything to get the equities running close, you know? They
pretty much.
They don't want to give the edges to people who figured it out. But yeah, it was a wild 3 days. I don't know if you caught much of it, but it was just a fucking. I've never ran this hot. I haven't ran this hot since like final tabling Super High Roller Bowl in 2016 over a 3-day stretch. Just every all in. Bring it home to daddy.
Where was the film crew? You needed the film crew.
It was streamed.
Oh, I guess you have that, but you don't have like the backstory.
Yeah, well, you know, the backstory was sad. It was just 3 months of downswing, all erased over the course of 3 days. So it's been a while since you've been on. we have had a hot debate between Landon and I, where I wanted to get your take on it. We don't have to spend a ton of time on it, but I at least wanted to hear your side. This is probably the third time we bring it up. Landon has recently discovered responsibility, specifically for money, and not in the way that like you would think.
Love that for him.
Like
Yeah.
financial literacy,
Yeah, like not
like
in a,
Roth IRAs and like
not
bonds.
right, not in a sophisticated way. He's not like setting himself up for the future.
Not a 10%
No.
return over the year. Just
Right. Just more so
There's
that
no
he
Roth
understands.
IRA up in here.
Right. He's just more so understood now that he doesn't actually have to gamble if he chooses not to. And and I'm on team fuck it, let's ball.
Well, that's why I have 5 of you, and you do it for me.
Right. Well, you're making my point for me. So effectively the way this plays out is I don't know if you're aware or not, but he went deep in the WPT Florida, ended up getting fourth place with 15 left? 16 left. He was 10 of 16, and his stack was worth like 5th place-ish money.
5.5.
Which was around 150K. And, he's backed going into this event. So he already only has, he's getting, half of his action on the staking deal, and then he owns a quarter of the staking deal himself. So he's getting a little bit more.
I'm a player investor. I'm a 2-for-1.
Right. So
Gotcha.
He's getting like 66% roughly of the overall exposure at a cost of 25% of the buy-in. So what it comes down to is he wanted to sell his stack with 16 left. And Danny and I, who are the other 33%, are just like, no. We don't want to sell anything. We are on board for the risk. We take all of the downside. We would like to take all of the upside. Seems pretty logical. And Landon was just kind of like, 150K is a lot of money. If I can get a quarter of that now and lock it up, it seems really responsible to do so. I'll still be playing for a fair amount. I'm just basically flattening things. So now instead of playing for 660 up top, I'm playing for 75% of that. Don't want to do math on air, but around
450.
Yeah. Okay. Around 450-ish. And all the other payouts will be flatter thereafter. My argument was that you've already de-risked by both getting backed and swapping out 15% with other players. Like, these are methods of de-risking, and they just took place at a much earlier juncture of the event. You've also de-risked by having a set ABI in place, which this falls under the umbrella of. Like, it would be different in my mind if your ABI is like 3K and you're playing a 25K. It's like, okay, well, if we YOLO'd that, like the main event's a great example, right? Your ABI is 3K, but every stake is going to YOLO the main. 100% of it's going to be on stake. We ain't selling, man. It's too high value. Well, now you make a deep run, you're playing almost 3.5x.
If there's 16 left in the main, I am selling the stack.
Yeah, you're playing almost 3.5x your ABI, and it's a prize pool that is maybe like 100x the size of a normal 10K. These seem like great spots to de-risk because you've taken on all the risk up until the point that you choose to. But in an instance where like you're already under the umbrella of your ABI, you've already de-risked by being back, you've already de-risked by swapping out, it seems crazy to me to keep going that path and limiting the upside. But Landon made a strong case that I wavered from my stance on, which was that these spots are rare and you never actually get to realize your long-term win rate. What de-risking allows you to do is basically ensure that you bring the long-term to the near-term.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the unfortunate things about poker is that everyone who thinks they understand variance probably doesn't have the slightest idea of how extreme it can be. And so I think with that in mind, I can totally appreciate wanting to de-risk in high equity spots. And, I'm reminded of, I remember when I was like experiencing the first crypto run up in 2017. And it was like such a large percentage of my net worth that I was sweating the price, 20 times a day or something like that. And I was in grad school and I was like, this is unsustainable. And I was talking to a friend about it. And I said, what should I do? And they said, you should sell the amount that will allow you to sleep at night. And I think that's such a great expression of how you should think about risk. Like if Landon comes to you and says, hey, I think I should de-risk, like there shouldn't be a rebuttal to that because he's already decided that he's uncomfortable with the amount of equity on the line and the variance he's exposed to. So
I suppose the difference is,
go ahead.
so I suppose the difference is my strategy does not change based off the exposure that I have. Like I'm not emotionally tied to the money. I'm more so like, is this a smart spot to de-risk versus not? Like I wouldn't pass on a jam spot because I'm overly invested or whatever.
But I actually do think there's a contradiction there. Like if you wouldn't be having the conversation if it wasn't on the back of your mind. And so like at the margin, it has to be affecting a decision. Otherwise you wouldn't have brought up the laying off risk in the first place.
I brought it up as like an inquisitive stance. Like, is this a spot that I should?
Like I should
he wants to be sharp. Like, is it sharp to de-risk here?
I mean, it really depends on your preferences. Like if you snap bust with 16 left, I mean, are you going to be depressed? Are you going to be in a worse financial situation than you would be if you like, let's just say you realized your exact equity? I mean, these are actual considerations. And
life is kind of the same in this situation specifically. Like me pocketing whatever amount of money I sell and getting 16th for 49K would not be the end of the world. It would just feel like opportunity might have been lost.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I think that
we had that whole conversation about being sunrunners. We had this whole conversation about the top squiggle.
I think that you lift your floor up and then you have exposure to the upside. But the thing is, it really depends on what your floor is. Like, I think a lot of poker players would have much more comfortable lives if they could lock up like a guaranteed 50K a year and then play for whatever potential upside. But that's typically not how it works. Typically people are exposed to both the down and the upside. And so like maybe their EV in a given year is, somewhere between 60 and 200K or something like that. But the 95% confidence interval is negative 100 to 600 or something. And like those are very different realities, and we do have some control over how much you narrow that confidence interval.
I think selling gives you more control.
Where you can choose.
No, of course, selling gives you more control. That's obvious.
Right.
I'm interested in your view of like how you would model something like this, because initially when he brought it to me, my pushback was kind of very staunchly on the side of there's a mathematical answer to this. This isn't a matter of like risk philosophy or risk profile.
Like emotional feel.
And I moved off of that because I thought he started to make some pretty good points. But initially my thought was if we are taking 100% of the downside, and he's involved in that even as a horse, because effectively a 50-50 makeup deal is the horse is taking a very high interest loan, right? So you have to be considerate of the downside too, even though you're not fronting the money. If you are always taking the brunt of the downside and you are limiting the upside, it feels like you're creating a model that is just kind of rot to break. But I think where I was wrong is I neglected to see how raising the floor can operate within inside that model and still give you enough upside to be able to do well.
Yeah, I mean, like, are you familiar with that? This did not exist when I was doing backing, but I've heard that some backers are going to a model of like paying a salary, that operates outside of makeup or profit sharing. And I kind of like this model because I think it's really rough, like when you're deep in makeup and you're just, I mean, first of all, there's just bad incentives there, but I think it is sanity preserving. And I think to the degree that like maybe Landon has like a number that he's trying to reach, like an amount of money set aside that will like give him some comfort. I think for a lot of poker players, like there is a bankroll number where below which they're feeling uncomfortable and above which like they feel kind of free. So that I think that would factor into the decision. And you know, there's some rough estimates of like what the utility of money is for different people. It's obviously declining as the amount goes up, but it is used in general as the argument for why like you should be less risk seeking the more money you have, because you're not getting like that many additional benefits. Like the benefit of additional money is more than offset than by the disutility of losing, you know, a similar amount or identical amount.
Yeah.
So it really depends on where you fall on that. I mean, I think people just have to really think, like, kind of imagine different scenarios and see how they react to them. And if you're truly like, you know, risk neutral, Landon, then I guess I don't understand the desire to want to lay off some risk, but I don't know if anyone is like truly risk neutral.
Yeah, I mean, my stance was just trying to figure out, like, my thinking was the stack is worth 155K. This stack is relatively close to the amount of money I personally have overall. So if I was given this situation, playing with a stack that resembles my net worth seems irresponsible. So if I can lay off some of that to gain X% of the net worth, so call it 25%, and then still play for the upside, we're increasing the floor and still playing for a lot while knowing that I'm not always going to be the lucky one that gets to win the all-ins when they're important. So
yeah,
it's trying to realize, like, the more we've talked, the more I realize like how high variance these spots are, and especially as the game gets bigger. Like, final tables are so, like, the difference between like life-changing money, you know? Like, I came in with a stack, and maybe the real solution was to say, like, you know what, my life doesn't change that much, let's just gamble final two tables, and then a final table maybe make a decision. Because at this point, at final table, like, if I had perfect information, I would have been 2 of 6, and my stack would have been worth like 410K or something. And if I didn't sell at all, now would be a great time to sell, of course.
Right.
So maybe it's just waiting till then. And if you miss it, it's like, you know what, like, that's okay.
I think that's circling back to what my original point was, is that you front loaded all the de-risk, right? And so, like, at some point, don't get me wrong, like, you're taking on more risk than the usual person who's backed because you have an investment in the stake. But you front load so much of the de-risking. Like, in my opinion, if your plan was to continue to do this moving forward, we should stop swapping. Because swapping is effectively... for, I guess, different-ish in this scenario, like, the swaps that I made were late day 2 and late day 3. But it doesn't matter. That's the same as selling your stack, right?
Yeah, equivalently, except there's an added benefit here, is that as the field reduces, swaps with people that are still remaining are like negatively correlated with your EV. So like in the world where you do worse, they are doing better, and so you actually, it's better than selling off your EV at par.
Right. Yeah. I'm basically, it could be better, but I'm saying, like, it's in the same vein, right? You're basically paying them ICM for their stack. They're paying you ICM for, or whatever. Like, you're calling it a wash. But in essence,
but it's better
like,
than that. Just to be clear, it is better than that.
Okay, go on.
Like, for example, if you're at a final table, if you can swap with someone else at the table, you're getting more than what your ICM value is for your stack.
How so?
Well, skill edge, right?
You're saying if you swap according to what the values are worth. Like, say you're second in chips and they're eighth in chips, you get a bigger percentage of them for, like, you might get like 2.5% to your one. This is assuming you can find an equivalent, like, exchange between the two, which would be difficult to do, I think. Well, you can always ratio it according to ICM.
Yeah, but let's say you have equal stacks to make it easier.
Yeah, fine.
I think that you're going to have higher EV, but in the world, let's say you don't gain EV, what you do dramatically is reduce your variance. So, like, I think this is I think this is something that poker players should be considering more and more, is like late game swaps I don't do hardly any day one swaps anymore.
Mhm.
I think that certainly in the main, I don't think I've swapped on day one in the main
Same.
for some time now.
I always wait till being in the money, or because like especially the more utility of money you have, or sorry, the more money you have, the less utility it has. So like having 1% of somebody who cashes when you don't is relatively meaningless. And a lot of the swaps I do are like often 100K scores or above. So it's like now swapping, day one is like, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
You're trying to make $1,000 back.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, I was going to say, to your point of swapping, let's just say the ICM, the stacks are the same, like skill edge is the same. But if it's you and effectively your clone with 6 left versus 4 recreationals, you are making money by swapping as well.
You guys should chop. Well, yeah, you guys should like have 50% of each other.
Correct.
But
so
is that ethical?
Yeah, I mean,
like this is a big debate with high rollers, right? Is a lot of those guys are swapped out playing final tables together, and the assumption is that this is such commonplace that it doesn't change the way that they play. But from the just simple model of like how poker works, it's hard for there not to be an indirect collusion effect.
Right.
But you can't stop it. So I think that's why you like. I've probably mentioned this to you before, but I really like David Sklansky and one of his books, Do You See Why? He talks about how rules that are unenforceable shouldn't exist. And I think it's like really profound, because I think there's tons of rules that are really, really impossible to enforce. And I don't know why we even go through the,
isn't that kind of making
the facade of
it's kind of ironic that it comes from him, especially, but doesn't that kind of make an argument against ethics? Most ethics can't be enforced.
Well, ethics are a personal decision. Like I don't think you can legally enforce ethics.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you can decide whether or not you want to be an ethical person in an unethical world.
I mean, for what it's worth, the other people at the table could try to swap with others at the table as well. I guess stopping that.
No, I understand, but I guess what I'm saying is that by putting an ethical onus on rules that cannot be enforced, and allowing or encouraging society as a whole to uphold that standard of ethics, though those rules can't be enforced, they're frowned upon enough that very few bad actors will exist. We'll always get an Ali type because there's just more money for him to take than he cares. Like his ethics are for sale, and it's worth it to him. And maybe more people think that way, but like just generally the world has existed without the majority of people wanting money over peace, I think.
I mean, you could probably adopt a policy where like swaps have to be disclosed, and if there's any swap that is confirmed that wasn't disclosed, like it's just a life DQ from poker.
Yeah, and even if like you don't adopt that policy, maybe that's just a good personal one to uphold.
Well, I mean, wasn't the something that potentially, like, I don't know, this was before my time, the Foxons versus
Cal Burns. They were open about having pieces of each other. I think that like that's maybe the best approach.
Yeah, and he said that's fine, I want to play.
Right, but then he was upset after the fact.
Well, that's sour grapes, right?
I mean, he can't have it both ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Just say, okay, I'll take the deal.
Exactly. Like there were strong cases for hands that played weirdly because they were invested in each other, but also like they were up front and offered a chop. So like you can't have it both ways. You can't say like,
how dare you not chop with me and play?
I deny the chop. I expect you to play above board in a theoretical way as if you two don't know each other, and I'm going to beat you.
Yeah. And then when you lose, they cheated.
Right.
I was 3-handed with a husband and wife once, and they offered me a chop, and I was like, I'm so much better than you two, but I don't think this is going to work out well for me, so I'll just take the chop.
Smart man. See, sometimes you got to put ego aside.
Or what you do is you art of the deal them and say, I think I'm better, but it's also doesn't seem too ethical. Like, I'd like a little bit more. And then they'd say like, okay, like that's fair.
Maybe. Or maybe they tell you to fuck yourself because they have all the advantage.
You don't know if you can...
It really comes down to
they're strong-arming their marriage.
Everything comes down to leverage, buddy.
Yeah.
I guess the last point of discussion as far as like the de-risking versus taking on risk, stuff like that, is I was also making a pretty strong case for like the utility of money when you're young. These small amounts are, you know,
They compound well.
do they?
They should. If I get Roth IRAs and are financially literate.
I think
Sure.
I think it's really underappreciated how valuable it is to have some cushion
Mhm.
in your back pocket when you're in your 20s.
Yeah.
Like, I think
No,
I
I think that's true too. But like Landon has that. You know, we're talking about the difference between like, you know, having six figures or having six figures plus 10%.
That's true.
Or maybe plus 5% or plus 3%.
I mean, if you're trying to consider all the factors here, like taxes probably aren't a trivial consideration.
I'm not
Yeah.
stone poor anymore. You
Yeah.
made it out.
I guess like the way I framed it is, and maybe this is what we can just bookend and stick a pin in it for once and for all. But I basically said like this requires off the felt work where you consider where the money becomes. I'm going to use this term very loosely, but where the money becomes life changing. And what I really mean by that is like where certain milestones are hit. So what's the dollar amount where you get off stake? What's the dollar amount where you reduce the stakes piece and you take a larger piece yourself? What's the dollar amount where your ABI goes up? You know, all of these things should be, if you're running a proper business, and that's what a horse should be doing, all of these things should be greatly factored into,
accounted for.
And they should all be done before you enter the event. Because if you try to figure it out now when you have 16 left, I am very confident almost everyone's going to lean conservative, even myself, right? Because like you'll just get that much, you'll inch that much closer to whatever the milestone is that you just drew up in your head that moment.
I feel like
It's like, oh, well, if I sell this stack, like now I'm arbitrarily at $275,000, which just so happens to be the number where my ABI is going to go up to 4K.
I love you, but I don't think that you'd ever consider selling a stack in your life.
Of course I would. I mean, once it became a thing, it wasn't a thing for the majority of my career. But like, I chopped tournaments. I've never won a tournament because I chopped them.
Again, like
that's selling your stack.
If you were like 24, 25, and you were in a spot, like
my first tournament was 25 years old at Turning Stone, and I chopped it 9 ways.
You would never do that now, though.
Depends. I had 12 blinds. I had 12 blinds, and I got like
you got a sick deal though,
third
right?
place money.
Yeah, okay, that's way different. That should never happen.
I mean, you know, I was like fourth in chips. Like it was just a turbo. But my point is, like the methodologies were different, but the desire to have a return and not get fucked with ninth place money was still the same.
I should have prefaced this where if you had 6 figures and were in this tournament, you would not have chopped.
It depends.
You were poorer then.
If I had your net worth, I would consider chopping the tournament. I would not have sold with 16 left. Yes.
You mean in my final table spot?
Correct.
Like right, but I was talking about the turn. Like if you were 25 and turning stone like you were, and you had no money, but instead of having no money, you had 100K. You would just play because you're better than them.
Then maybe not now. It's hard to compare the apples to oranges, but like 2015, December 2015, I played a 25K high roller at Aria. I had $1.8 million. First place was 450K, and I was 3-handed with Jake Schindler and Ike, and I had 70% of the chips in play, and I happily took an ICM chop. Like, I'll just give me my 340,000.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to try to.
I suppose that might be a little bit different based off of like edge, like you got.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, it's 2017. I didn't think anything. Like Jake was just getting into MTTs. Ike was the GOAT, but not the way he is now. High rollers weren't a thing yet. We were all just rifling it.
Right.
But, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, do I need to play at 3 a.m. versus 2 really good players for 120,000 when the difference between my net worth being 1.85 million versus 1.95 million just doesn't matter.
It just seems like now when it comes to your stance, you can empathize with why, at the very least, I brought up the question of selling.
No, yeah, for sure. I'm on board that it's a philosophy. at first I thought it was just like, we can do this through Kelly. We can figure out like what makes most sense. But
like, you're being weak, you're better than them, just play.
Figuring out edges and stuff like that is very difficult. No, it's not that you're being weak or anything like that. It's just I feel like you've already de-risked.
You're saying if I didn't swap at all?
If you hadn't swapped and you weren't backed, I would be 100% on board with this.
Got you.
But like when you've already done all those things, it feels like you already have systems in place to ensure that you don't have a lot of risk.
Right. Like I don't have, with where I'm at now, like life-wise, net worth-wise, I do not have to be backed, especially because I could sell if I wanted to, if I needed to play something bigger or whatever, like sell at markup grind, not going to do that. But because that's already in place, life is fine. This is kind of a moment where you can kind of gamble more and hope that you get chosen like you did and then sell. Because if I sold a 400K valuation versus 155, that's a lot. That's kind of a lot different.
Yeah.
In the take home I get from the investor piece.
Right. Barber, I'm curious your take on this. I'm dragging this on longer than it needs to, but I do like talking to you about this stuff because like I'm not super literate when it comes to economics. I just kind of am self-taught. So I am kind of curious with your take on this kind of stuff. When how do I want to frame this? I kind of like lost my train of thought a little bit, but like when I was debating this with Landon, we were talking a lot about risk and the utility moving forward and how all of those things play out. How much should he be considering? I guess like the notion that let me rephrase. I kind of took a hard stance that like people would say like by selling it reduces variance. And maybe I was being a little bit pedantic, but I said like the variance is still fixed. Where you finish between 16th and 1st, it's still just going to happen in a bell curve distribution. Like it's going to happen the way that it's supposed to happen, no matter if you have 100% of yourself or 0% of yourself. What selling does do though is smooth out the payout distribution. Was I wrong in saying that was I wrong like qualifying variance versus volatility in this instance? Because my understanding of variance is like the luck factor, right?
No, I would say like your finish distribution times like your probability of finishing in each spot times the prize pool like for each spot is going to create a distribution of like different wealth levels at the conclusion of the tournament. Mm-hmm. And you basically, and that's like it's like exponential. And by laying off risk, you're kind of bringing it down to something that's like more uniform. Like if you sell 0%, you're exposed to the prize pool as it's distributed. And if you sell 100%, which wouldn't make any sense, but for the sake of argument, you just get your EV, your ICM EV for every single place.
Right.
And so you're just choosing the angle of that. And I think ultimately, I mean, I think the biggest factor in this decision is what is the utility of having money to you right now. And I just think that, to use my own story, I grinded like a very short bankroll for a long time. And I was a huge nit for most of my career. And then randomly, when I get heads up for a bracelet, I completely forget that I'm a nit and just decide not to think about swap or chopping or selling off any action. Like there was no thought in my mind to discuss a deal. And I think that was probably one of the most financially irresponsible things I've ever done. But I think that the emotions of the spot got to me. But it was the only time I'd ever gotten heads up in a tournament and hadn't thought or discussed a chop.
Yeah.
Matt saved me for a bad chop though.
Well, I mean, sort of, yes. I did the same thing for Christian, but it was also just like kind of a nice life lesson spot where I theoretically made dollars. So Christian's spot was he was three-handed versus Nipun and a recreational in a Venetian tournament, and I had some percentage. I can't remember how much of it, and they were offering a chop, but it was like a bad deal. Third place was like, I want to say third place was like 65,000, and he was third in chips, but he had 25 big blinds. So the ICM payouts ended up working out where third was 65, but if he chopped for ICM, he got 85. So it was 15K delta. But first place was 170,000, which was 2.5x that he was playing for, and 25 blinds was like a very notable. It wasn't like he had 5 bigs.
Like if he doubles, he gets chip leader.
Yeah. He was a double away from being chip lead. So he's like, at the time, like it was about the score, right? It would have been his biggest score. It was very young in his career, and he wanted to lock it up. He was risk averse in this particular instance, and he was emphatic that he was going to take the chop. And I was like, well, I'll just buy the chop. I'll just buy the chop off of you. So just sell it to me. Sell me your stack, your piece of it. I think he had 2/3 of it, maybe a little bit more. He might have had like half, or a little bit less rather. He might have had half, whatever. But I was like, okay, I'll buy your 50% equity piece out at the chop value, and then you play it out, and I'll give you like a 10K bonus if you win the whole thing, just as a thank you kind of thing. So of course he doubles up like first hand back, and now he's chip leading.
Epic gamer moment.
And I like rushed down there to sweat it, where it's like, fuck yeah, I'm such a genius, man. God, yeah. Cost me like $15,000 here, or a little bit less, like $7,500 here, and I'm just gonna fucking make like $60,000 off of this whole deal. All he has to do is not bust third, and then he loses a flip to Nipun, and he's out. And I'm like, fuck.
Yeah.
The pain. And then something similar happened with Landon, where he was 3-handed in his very first tournament ever live. Oh, sorry, he was heads up in his very first tournament ever live.
So stupid.
I swear it was 3-handed because they gave you the wrong chop number.
It was heads up, and they said that like I had like 6 more big blinds than the guy.
Oh, right.
And it was like $7,000 or something. They're like, no, we can't take that deal.
Yeah. So whatever it was, like it was just a play for it spot for sure. Like
I was on stake, like I was in some sort of makeup, like it was way
it was
better.
The difference between like 10 or 15,000 in his pocket if he chopped versus like the upside of.
It was a 70K heads up match.
Yeah.
First was 200, second was 130.
Right. So it's like maybe he gets 20% of that 70K or 35K differential, or we just get it all. I was like, just fucking play, man. Like, just if ever there's a spot, you're gonna do fine whether you get first or second. But like, this guy's dead. And 5 hands later, we're all celebrating and hoisting the trophy.
Epic gamer moment.
Nice when that happens.
You're one and one.
Yeah.
It is a personal decision. I think that I think both of you have like the luxury of like just going for it in these spots, but I think that the average person probably is being irresponsible in high equity spots.
I think that these are
for these.
Yeah, I think that these are really big blind spots. So, not to try to rope you back into the community here, big guy, but I think that these are like very blatant blind spots that a large chunk of even winning players in this community just have. And I think it's like egregious because there's a lot of talent out there that is just totally incapable of managing money, managing risk, how many guys are there that we see that have made these endless amounts of final 2 table runs that are stone broke, and it's because they don't know how to properly de-risk. It's they operate on this very fixed level of what the community at large does, which is I don't have a lot of money, so I'll sell it markup and I'll take my free roll piece and then hope that I spin it enough to where I have a working bankroll, and then from there I'll grow it exponentially by being responsible, which never happens, and I'll just have a career. And man, I have to tell you, there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, that would benefit from just having a deeper understanding of how volatility works, how variance works, how, like we're talking about these bell curve distributions of placements. We're talking about the exponential growth of being exposed to the prize pool. And also, I think TDs would gain a fuck ton from courses and I know I'm just discussing a prop and stats class to you. I get that. I understand. That's not my point, right? Like it can be repackaged as poker specific. Like imagine if TDs truly understood how much risk and volatility they were offering to their consumer base and how much they were in control of flattening that out if they so chose to.
I mean, I think that poker has decided a long time ago that they kind of want to bury their heads in the sand with regard to the stakes that people are playing for. Mm-hmm. And I think that like RTA is kind of the first thing that's really forced them to confront this. because it was the Wild West for such a long time. You could stall and cheat in a variety of ways, or you remember that situation where like you and someone else like busted at a similar time and were given different payout cards,
6th and 7th
like,
in
those
the
spots
10K
are so
6
easy to avoid if you have any concept of what's going on.
There wasn't even a 4-person in sight.
It's ridiculous.
It's
absurd. It's malpractice. It's malpractice in the profession, but I don't think that they see it that way. I think they see, because I mean, this is unfortunate, but like poker players need to appreciate that the average person is not a pro. They're playing recreationally, they're playing for leisure. And I think that you and I probably desire to professionalize something that poker has a vested interest in not professionalizing.
Yeah. That's very true. Man, doesn't it feel like such an oversight?
It's weird, man, because so many people just have like the aesthetic of like, you can't sell, like selling is weak, like you have to take all of yourself, like how dare you sell to things, like how dare you try to have some sort of responsibility, where it's almost looked like frowned upon because the sickest would never do that. But like literally people know like in high stakes stuff. Like,
yeah, but that's on the surface. Like you don't have to be on a podcast revealing all this stuff. You could just operate in the shadows and, just be the sickest and winning all the money. I think Barber's point, and what makes me sad, is that the blind spots to somebody who's been in this space for 20 plus years like we have, it's so obvious to us. And it's so obvious what the value of just being better at math would be for everybody who's in this space. And Barber's point is just that we've all kind of collectively decided that everybody's better off if nobody is aware of the elephant in the room. Right? Everyone's just
math and numbers.
Yeah, everyone's just better off if they think this is a game of gambling, which is so insulting in my opinion. Like it should be so clear with the advent of solvers and the design. You know how many recreationals are fucking studied? Like spend weekends looking at sims.
Like it's fun too. Like they have like people that they're good at poker and they ask questions.
Go on.
I think I'm gonna have to disagree with you here. I don't think it's gotten to that degree, and if they are doing it, like they're not keeping up with everyone.
They're not
else.
doing it well. Of course, they're not doing it well.
Race where like they're running a little faster, but everyone else is running much faster.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think that you have to consider the fact that there are people making good marketing decisions regarding how serious they want to make this, recreational leisure activity that we have just decided to play for a living.
Right.
I don't know if you want everyone having that attitude. Like, for example, if everyone became aware of like the utility of stalling for pay jumps, poker just breaks. It doesn't work anymore.
Sadly, they have. And for what it's worth, I'm not trying to. I'm not making the case that we should educate the average consumer. I'm more so making the case that from the top down, it would serve the community really well, right? Like if the figureheads in the operator space, and I don't want to imply that they don't know, but like it would be nice if guys in the position of like Savage and Jack and the operators at GG and the like, it would be nice if they had a deep understanding of prop and stats.
I mean, how about the fact that the World Series has just decided they're not going to facilitate chops and screw people over that way? I mean,
it's another great. Yeah.
There's the story of the Daily Deep Stack that people made an informal deal, and the person that had the chip lead just walked with first place and asked for security to escort him out. Like, and that's on World Series.
Right. Yeah, and it's like you can't you can't have it both ways, right? You can't have a bunch of amateurs that you want to protect and give a good time to and ensure that they walk away with a good experience and also enough money that they can continue to return. And then also a bunch of people who are treating this as a business and operating at the professional level, but not facilitating the thing that benefits both parties, which is something along the lines of chopping, right? Like keeping it seedy and quiet. And for what reason also, by the way, like paperwork.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious what Ethel would say behind closed doors. It might be a status quo bias. This is the way it's always been. It might be wanting to avoid the paperwork. but I think they're putting their customers at serious risk of making like a bad deal, on a napkin or with a handshake.
Yeah. I'm sure
but-
there's many more stories than just that daily deep stack one.
Oh, for sure. That one I just know just because I think it's exactly the community that you're concerned about, like the recreationals. And I think there's some strides that have been made here. Like I think paying 15% over 10, it pisses off the pros, it benefits the amateurs. I think sites like PokerStake where people can sell their action kind of democratizes something that we were all doing for a long time. I don't know what the next step is. I mean, was it Mormon who was like trying to have a platform where you could sell your
bubble insurance?
Yeah, exactly. Like, of course, that just is doomed to fail in the same way that like a players union is doomed to fail.
Yeah.
But I think people have ideas, but I don't know if we can make many more improvements. But I think I take your point that it would be cool if poker players, I think, had like a better appreciation for this stuff. And I got to say, as someone who's benefited a lot from like squirreling away nuts over my career, and then when opportunities presented themselves, like I had what's the expression, dry powder, like ready to go.
Yeah.
And that's like a reason to why you want to be kind of nitty when you're starting out and like pad your bankroll so that when opportunities present themselves, like a Mayweather McGregor or Trump a week after the election, like when these spots appear, like you want to have as big an X as possible because there's a chance you're going to walk away with 2X.
Right. Yeah. Which I think we kind of take for granted, especially we're a lot closer to our grandparents' generation than I think we are able to see right this very second, because it's so it's so in front of our nose that it's like almost too close. But the big thing with the great generation was that they were able to accrue so many assets at such a cheap cost, having fought through the Great Depression and coming out the other side. And I think that we don't recognize how fortunate our generation, the Gen X, millennial, even a little bit of the Gen Z generation has been when it comes to the ability to just have dry powder and rifle it off in spots where like you get to make generational wealth if you're really sharp. Just in my lifetime alone, the internet was invented, crypto became a thing, all these technological advances have occurred. We have self-driving cars and things like this, and every single step along the way there was an opportunity to invest.
One of the funniest memes that I've seen was like when like how dare I, like me and like my generation, miss out on the opportunity to buy real estate at 8 years old after the crash like was fixing itself.
Right.
That was my big miss, just not having $1 million to invest in the houses.
Yeah, and I mean, like I referenced like our grandparents' generation, but like our parents' generation was the soft side of that. They basically reaped all the rewards of the generational past, and they look at us and they go, "What are you doing with your life? You're 35, you don't have a house yet, you're renting, you're leasing your car. What the fuck is going on? Like, don't you understand? You should be in the market and you should have your own real estate." It's like, well, yeah, like grandpa fucking bought Coca-Cola at 30 cents a share and you were able to get your starter home for $18,000.
Your generation could have got Bitcoin for less than Coca-Cola.
I agree. I'm saying we've had a lot of benefit. It wasn't less than Coca-Cola, but like we've also had a lot of the same opportunities, but they weren't the same. They weren't as obvious, or I shouldn't say they weren't as obvious. They weren't paralleled, right? Like it wasn't like my generation just had cheap real estate. We went through 2 massive real estate crashes. It was quite the opposite, right? Like we've seen stock crashes. So it's not like we've just had a lot of generational stock either. Like Apple was before my time.
The sharp people,
largely.
The sharp people that had a lot of money.
Apple wasn't before your time. Get out of here.
To invest.
I mean,
I would have been 18.
How old were you in 2001?
18, 19.
There you go.
That's what I mean. Like I had $25.
To your point about
that might have been a little high, actually.
Yeah. I don't know that I had $25. I was selling my skin to get my. Actually, it was even before then. I didn't do that till I was 21.
Right.
So like, I literally probably had
$25.
What I mean.
I missed the boat at 8 by not having $1 million.
Right.
Like you missed the boat by not having Apple stock.
In 2008, Matt, like I didn't have a lot of money, but I knew that was the time to pile it into the market.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. It was the same thing during COVID.
Right.
There's just these opportunities that present themselves where you you should be squirreling away as much as possible. Like going from 10K to 50K is a life-changing jump. Going from 50K to 100K is another jump. Like there are these step functions, and I think that people who don't have like that much money set aside have to do whatever it is to get to that number as fast as possible. You get to level up.
Yeah, and there's also some like recency bias that I think impacts us all. It's hard to fight through, right? Like I've been very lucky in crypto, and it's kept me blind to other opportunities. I've been very lucky in poker, also has kept me blind to other opportunities, because all of that money that I'm squirreling away is in some regards a cushion to the risk that I'm undertaking in these two particular spaces. And I was lucky that I'm sharp in one space and really fucking lucky in the other, that I landed on like basically the security in having a lot of exposure to Bitcoin. But I also just missed out on a lot of opportunity, post the first real estate crash, post the 2008 stock market. I wasn't even looking. I guess my eyes were diverted rather. I
would say like there's some guys that I know that are good poker players, but they literally put poker on the back burner because they know that there's so much opportunity in the crypto space that's what they're spending their time now. Yeah. They're like, I'm not going to get this time back in poker. Like, sure, I'm winning some money playing some of these things, but no life in crypto, like figuring out like the meme coin markets and how to like do well there has so much more upside than playing poker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, at least they believe. I mean, that's right. They believe that to be true. And I think that everyone has to kind of do that soul searching. But I mean, I'm talking to a couple of poker players, but I think that if we haven't reached this point already, we're going to reach it soon, where I think that if you have the mind that's able to like to crush in poker, you're turning down like much higher EV outside of poker. And it might not happen immediately, but over a 5 or 10 year horizon, I don't think it's even going to be close.
I feel that for sure.
I'll sun run along the way.
But it feels, I definitely feel that like anxiety that like there's something more. And I don't mean that in an existential way.
I just mean Game, man.
I just mean like monetarily speaking, like there's higher ceilings out there to chase. But it's hard when you're not a money motivated individual, right? Like, if you told me that I can make 10x doing something else, but I don't know anything about that something else.
Or you hate that thing.
Right. And like either that thing is going to be hard or it's going to be something that I don't even know if I'm going to enjoy. It's really, really, really struggling. It's a big struggle.
Obviously privileged take, but that's where we're at.
Yeah. Well, it's a privileged take because it's qualified as if you're sharp at this one thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very hard.
You have to frame it as privilege. I think you should. It's like a bird in the hand, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to give that up. Like you're established. And you might be the exception to the rule. Like, I mean, when you talk about your hourly, it's like, all right, Matt is not the audience for this advice. It's for the grinder.
Yeah, it's the guy making $60 an hour.
But exactly. Which I mean, I think that I don't know the distribution. I wish we had this data. But I'm curious what like the median hourly is amongst poker pros, and I would probably put my money in somewhere around like $20 to $25 an hour.
I think that's really, really close to accurate, if I had to guess. Because I think like if we were able to look at the pool, there just isn't enough people making $100 plus to cancel out all the people that are either losing or winning small.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very true. How are you still grinding the Ozempic?
Yeah, I mean not to be pedantic, but like it's tirzepatide, which for what it's worth is better than semaglutide, which is what Ozempic is. Just acquired the squat rack that I was agonizing over.
Good.
And so I'm getting a DEXA scan. I just got that scheduled. And so I'm going to have I've done one of those every year for like maybe 5 or 6 years. And so I'll have to check out the muscle loss. I'm convinced that this actually is a thing. However, I think it's funny. We're talking about like path dependency with like wealth and poker. I think that it's more important to shed as much fat as possible, as quick as possible, and then shift into a muscle building mindset.
Yep.
Just because I think that that's going to be an easier path than trying to juggle all these things at once.
I think that's generally true, whether you're talking about using an aid like semaglutide or not. It's interesting because like I know a lot of people who are on it, and you don't like I wouldn't look at you and think that you're on it, but almost all of the others, I look at them and I know they have that like. I don't know how to describe it, and maybe it's because it's a lot of women specifically who are also generally going to be already on the side of low muscle density. They get this like very thin neck lollipop-ish look, like, you know, like they're losing fat in areas that you don't really want to lose the fat from, alongside losing fat maybe elsewhere. But I was going to ask, like, how's your training regimen been on all of this? Because it does, to me at least, appear as though you're retaining your muscle reasonably well. You don't look like Jonah Hill, you know?
I had a good amount to work with. I mean, when I started this, I was like 260, and I think I had like 195 pounds of lean mass. And if I had to guess, I'm probably like 230 now, and I probably have 175 pounds lean mass or something like that.
Okay. So you still think you're going to come in like somewhere in the 28-ish% body fat? A little bit less, maybe?
Yeah, I think that's a good estimate. And I feel like people typically underestimate these numbers. Like the average person is probably walking around at 30 plus. So yeah, easy. I think 28 is probably accurate.
It's really funny the way these numbers get thrown around. I tell people I'm 18 and they like laugh like that's impossible. You work out every day for the last 35 years of your life. Like 18's so high. It's like, how many people do you think are walking around sub 20? Like, I think people
like
just
see
have
abs at like 15.
Yeah. I mean, I think people think that like either you're a bodybuilder and you're like single digits, or you're just a normal person, and everybody who's normal is like mid 20s. It's like that's not at all the distribution. There are far fewer people in the mid 20s than I think you think. Like everybody I know that's like soft, doesn't work out all that much, and is like what I would term to be skinny fat. They're just like, oh yeah, I think I'm like 20% body fat. It's like, you should go get measured. I think you're 32.
I mean, talk about a blind spot. I don't think anyone realizes like any of the stats in this space. Like, I don't think people realize how.
Well, they're used to just stepping on a scale.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, but I just think that there is a lot of willful ignorance around health. Like the fact that it's not totally normal to know your blood sugar, or your have like a blood panel done, or to know what your cardiovascular risk is. Like, there's so much shit that we should know, and we're playing for like high stakes, in terms of our life expectancy, and it's just absolutely insane. We're all walking around with almost no knowledge about this stuff. Yeah, I agree.
What else is going on in Pittsburgh? Anything new you want to catch us up on? I didn't have anything beyond the risk.
It is cold. It is cold as shit here.
Is there snowing
like 20
yet?
degrees. There's snow, and it is just bitter cold. I went from summer to winter like that. No, I'm not. I wasn't ready for this shit. I'm not adjusted at all.
I'm not surprised. Don't worry. You will ironically go from winter to spring to winter to spring to winter again many times in the next few months. There will be a 70-degree day between now and March.
I hope so.
I can assure you. I'll never forget this. I planned this massive 15th birthday party where there was this giant hill on a farm by my house that we would sled ride down. And it was my first co-ed party. It was going to be so awesome. We had a massive snowfall maybe 10 days prior. I invited all the guys and girls in my class. It was 20 kids. We were all going to go snow tubing down the hill and everything. And the day before my birthday, January 28th, it was 79 degrees. Jesus. It was nothing but mud. The day of my party, I was beside myself. I didn't know what I'm wearing shorts, playing basketball at the park somehow from what was supposed to be the sled riding party. Devastating stuff, man. Can't count on the Pittsburgh weather at all.
When I was leaving California and I was talking about the move, I think a lot of people said like, oh man, the weather's really rough there. I was like, oh, humans are adaptable. Like we can survive in a variety of climates. And I think that I just assumed that I was going to adapt much faster. But man, I got soft in California. And like, I think that there's like a metaphor there that if we don't expose ourselves to this stuff, like it is going to be very, very uncomfortable.
Well, those ice baths will get you cold adapted real fast.
I know, right? That's I've been going through my wish list right quite quickly and spending money like it's going out of style. But to tie a bow on this, the reason I have money was because I socked it away for so long.
Hell yeah! Look at that callback.
So now I get to make it rain on saunas and squat racks.
That's right. Let's go. I saw the updated picture from the sauna. You got a Finnish sauna, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Yeah,
not that weak infrared shit. You got to drop that, man.
I'm with you, man. I actually am with you. I'm not sold that it's not good, but I am sold that the Finnish version is better.
You have too much money to have an inferior sauna.
Okay, that's fair. But I got to get the cold pool first. It's so funny because you know what? I'm just going to do it. I had a really good week. I'm just going to go buy one. It's so dumb because like I want a cold pool. There's no reason for me not to have one. But my pool gets so cold in the wintertime. It's like 40 degrees that every time I'm about to make the purchase, it's like cold enough outside that I'm just like, fuck it. I have my own cold pool in my backyard that I spent way too much money on anyway. So why go pay $10K for but then summer comes and I don't cold dip anymore. And it's like, this is why you pay $10K, you asshole. It's 109 degrees outside. Where are you going to go take an ice bath every day? You're not. That's the answer.
They're getting so cheap, and in a world where you don't like it, I'll find a way to make you whole.
There's
I got to incentivize you in some way.
Truly no world where I won't like it. I've literally just been dragging my feet because I want to do certain things to my backyard, and this would be tied into it. But it's time, man. I have to just stop being an asshole. I got to get it done.
Start small. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Start small.
I like that. I'm not good at that. Perfect is always the enemy. I'm
terrible at it. That's why I have to say it all the fucking time. So it'll hopefully click eventually.
Yeah. I would say the only thing where I don't let perfect be the enemy of the good is this exact podcast.
And it's working out for you.
No, it's not, Andrew. I settled on fucking good, and that's exactly what I get. We have a good show for you today. All right, man. It's been great seeing you as always. Let's keep catching up soon. We'll love to have you back. Maybe give you a little something new to talk about next week if you're around. Otherwise, Sounds if good. We happen to not see you, have a Merry Christmas. Hopefully we will. We got to get out of here, though. I have to pee, and we've been on for way too long.
Thanks, Barber.
Bye, guys.
See you, buddy. All right, that's going to do it for us. I'm getting begged to go play at the Bellagio right now. I've never had this treatment before. It's the craziest thing. You win a bunch of money, and all of a sudden, you're fucking VIP. I've been VIP, goddammit. I got to get out of here. I got to take Pip to go get spayed, and then I'm going to go do some gambling. So that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow. Same time, same place, same bat channel as usual. Be sure to tune in for our last show of the week. We'll be covering everything that's going on at WPT as well as the WSOP Bahamas. And I'll let you know how my session today goes. We'll see you guys all then.
Peace.
Peace.